This is Emily Hull with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at Oklahoma State University. Today is Saturday, May 26, 2018, and I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania this afternoon interviewing Holly Morse-Ellington for the Deep Roots Oklahoma Authors Oral History Project. Holly, you're a fiction writer, an editor for the Baltimore Review, an essayist, a playwright, a musician. I've got a lot to talk about. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to talk.
Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Paducah, Kentucky, and grew up there until I was 18.
Tell us about Paducah. What stands out about the town? What's it like?
Paducah was named for Chief Paducah, and it's known for its barbecue and its barbecue sauce. So Starnes Barbecue is very legendary there, and it's music. It's music history and just good food, good people, and it's a very small town when I was growing up. It's starting to get bigger now, but everybody knew everybody.
Yeah. So what was it like living there? Was it boring, or did you find things to like about it and that kind of thing?
There wasn't much to do, which I think made me very imaginative.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never bored. I'm from a family of storytellers and people who tell tall tales, and so my grandfather would always, we'd go out and plant vegetables together, but he would turn it into a game. So we might plant something Sunday morning, but Monday morning we'd already have a full crop out there, and what he had done was go to the grocery store and buy like full-size tomatoes and watermelons and plant them in the garden. So I would have immediate excitement in this Jack and the Beanstalk kind of experience.
Mm-hmm. What were you like as a child? You said you were imaginative. What was your personality like, would you say, or your other interests, or big books that you liked?
I was kind of a dual personality, and probably still am. I was very shy, but at the same time, I loved acting and singing and making up my own songs in the car, and I was constantly reading a book and in a corner, tucked away with books, and I loved Nancy Drew books and mysteries. So a little bit of everything.
So tell me about your parents' names, again, personalities, maybe details that stand out about them.
Yeah, my mom's name is Andra, and most people call her Andrea, but there's no E. It's Andra, and my mom, I get from her a creative side. She was a painter, and her father, my grandfather on her side, was a prolific painter.
Okay.
And so I think I got inspired about the arts in a small town when we didn't have many museums, and you wouldn't have otherwise known from my family. And my dad, Fred Myers, Frederick Earl, and I remember he gave me my love of music and singing on road trips. We'd listen to 1950s music, and when Duke of Earl came on and I was a little kid, I was like, Dad, are you related? Is Frederick Earl, are you related to the Duke of Earl? And so just very close growing up.
Mm-hmm. What did they do for a living?
They were both teachers. So my dad was a history and geography teacher in middle school, and my mom taught English in middle school. Yeah.
How about your grandparents? Start with your mom's side.
My mom's side, that's the Walls side of the family, and my grandfather, Ernest Walls, he was a banker by day, and taught himself to paint, and then became very involved in Paducah with organizing artists because a big art scene was developing. And my grandmother has the most beautiful name, Nettie. so Nettie Walls, and she was a notary notary for Paducah, and they both, were in World War II. My grandmother worked as a secretary, and my grandfather went off to Europe to fight.
Did they talk about that time in their lives very much with you, or is that something they just
No.
kept to themselves?
And I asked over and over and over. I've always loved history, and I begged and tried to coax stories out of them, but they mostly talked about how they had just gotten married and then had to leave each other and being excited to return to each other. So they skipped over the war.
Did they write letters to each other that they saved that maybe anyone has?
Yes, and I do. I have some of them, and my grandfather wrote every single day, and I have boxes. I have boxes of his writing.
Wow. Have you gone through a lot of it?
I have, and I want to preserve it because he hand wrote in pencil, and he was a very sweet, delicate person, and his handwriting matched that because it's very faint. It wasn't like he was digging into that paper. It was just delicate and thoughtful. So I've got to get those preserved somehow.
That's definitely neat to have. How about your dad's side? Grandparents there.
That's the Myers side, and so my dad's mom was Edith Myers, and my dad's dad was Russell Myers, and they lived in Kincaid, West Virginia, and my grandfather worked in the coal mines in West Virginia, and my grandmother raised, depending on which of my dad's siblings you talk to, 13 kids, 14 kids. They don't even know how many siblings they have.
So what were they like? Did you know them very well?
I don't know my dad's side of the family very well. After they started moving away from West Virginia to find jobs, and they kind of went to Akron, Ohio, where there were, I think, the tire plant and working with cars, and so they started moving that way. And being in Paducah, Kentucky, we didn't go to Akron, Ohio very much, and so I didn't. Many of my dad's brothers and sisters I've never even met. And so there's a group of them that I've met and spent some time with, but not much.
So their family stories from that side of the family? Yes,
and it's been recently that we've, gotten a little bit closer, and I'm starting to do what I did with my mom's dad. I'm pulling stories out and making them talk about stories, and they talk a lot about my grandfather, and how, depending on who you ask, how ornery he was, how crazy he was, how brilliant he was, and that he would just go disappearing, and he was really kind of this elusive man.
But they have some connection to Oklahoma, is that right?
Yes.
Let's talk about that. So we've had some discussions, kind of off the record with this oral history interview that we're gonna kind of get into now. So tell me about that side of the family's connection to Oklahoma.
So my grandfather Russell, he's of Cherokee descent, and depending on who you talk to, it ranges. But his mother was full-blooded Cherokee, and the records of her have been hard to trace, but everybody is trying to trace his mother's official name. There's no birth certificate. There's no written down documentation of the family. But one of my dad's sisters and her children live in Oklahoma, and they've started to reach out and reconnect and try to just piece everything backwards.
Yeah. So what do you hope to learn from your interactions with your Oklahoma relatives? What do you think you might learn about yourself?
Oh, I hope
background?
Everything. So much. When I was little and my dad would talk about his Cherokee heritage and ancestry, I wanted to know more, and it was one of those subjects that, you know, we didn't really talk much about, and so I think it was silenced for many years until, you know, as he's getting older and his family's getting older and they want these stories as well. Now they're coming around to letting me ask them questions, and I hope to find out everything that I've felt connected with, from music and art to nature and the way that I look at things, and just know more about where I come from, and this feeling of what's rooted inside of you, and just connecting with people that you know, I love, and finding this family that I've never met.
Yeah. So do you hope to visit with them at some point?
Yes. So I have plans that I'm going to bike the Trail of Tears. I'm living in Chattanooga now, so I'm going to start in Chattanooga, and the trail goes through Paducah, where I was born, and so it's kind of this starting where I am now in Chattanooga, to go back to the past, and then go way back to a past that I don't even know yet, and meet that past, and maybe bring everything full circle, and arrive in Oklahoma on my bicycle after about 22 days, and whatever I've learned or experienced with the guide who is a Cherokee guide and has done this a couple times with people. So it's going to be an adventure.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get back into your travels and that sort of thing a little bit later. But let's kind of backtrack a little bit to you as a child. What were your hopes and dreams as a kid?
Oh, I had big plans.
Yeah.
I had big plans. I wanted to do everything. I wanted to be a famous novelist, and I also wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a world traveler, and I wanted to speak about 30 languages. Do it all.
Yeah. What were your favorite subjects in school?
My favorite subjects were history and English. I really didn't know how much I was copying my parents, since those were the subjects they taught, and I don't think I was trying to please them. I think I was just really drawn to both subjects are storytelling, and I think that's why I loved them so much.
Did you write as a kid?
I
Did you keep a diary? Did you keep any of your old stuff?
Gosh, I burned most of the diary stuff.
Yeah.
And then when my mom found it, I definitely learned to hide that stuff very well. But I do still have things that I published as a little kid. I remember it was 6th grade. There was a writing contest, and I wrote this fictional story about a talking telephone.
Oh.
And I still have the cover of that. My mom did the artwork on a piece of paper, and I colored it in, and we got one of those little spiral bound presses and put it together, and it won one of the, like Paducah, I don't know what it was, but it would have been like the Lions Club, award for kids writing things. Award, but I still have it, and I've read it, and it's definitely a kid writing a story.
Yeah, 6th grade.
Yeah.
So, what did you do after high school?
After high school, I went to college. I started at David Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee, and then transferred to Indiana University in Bloomington.
What was the university in Nashville like? What was it? How do you spell it, David?
Lipscomb, Lipscomb.
Okay.
It's very, very strict. It's a religious university, and we were checked in at night by 9 o'clock at night, and I felt very trapped, and I'm definitely not a person who wants to be trapped. I want my freedom, and so it was just a very difficult place for me to feel inspired.
Was there a dress code?
Oh yes, there was a dress code, and you would be measured, so you would have your student ID, and if your skirt, was on the fringe of being too short, you would have professors or deans just walking by, pull out a credit card or something the same size, hold it to your leg to make sure that it wasn't higher than that card.
Wow. So you had to wear dresses and skirts on campus.
And you could wear shorts, but they had to meet that same length. One, finding really long shorts was almost impossible to do. Two, when you found them, you looked ridiculous. So you just wanted to wear a dress instead.
And then you transferred, where did you transfer again?
To Indiana University in Bloomington.
What did you study there?
I studied history and political science, and made a niche for myself to cross both, and in the oral history and storytelling of firsthand accounts on the battlefield, and civilians in war, and how the politics of war affected everybody, not just soldiers who we usually think of in a battle.
So were you writing and publishing things in college, or just mainly working on academic stuff?
I was. I published a couple of things in college, some policy pieces, and did recordings to go along with those pieces. So one of my stories was about how Vietnam vets were treated when they returned back to the United States after the war, and I interviewed a man who recalled wearing his uniform home on the plane and being spit on and yelled at, and so I wrote his story and recorded him telling it, and that was one of my projects in college.
So you mentioned earlier that your grandfather had served in World War II.
Right.
Was he in the Army?
Army.
In the Army.
He was Army, and he was stationed in Belgium, and a photographer took a photo of my grandfather in his uniform because he wanted to. He was a Belgian photographer trying to start his business, so he would get the U.S. soldiers in their uniforms to do headshots, to just practice, and would do free headshots. My grandfather's made the window.
Wow.
So,
that's great.
Yeah.
what a story. So you graduated from college, and what did you do next?
After college, I went to law school, and that took me up to Baltimore, Maryland, for law school.
And then we've talked previously about your time in the military. Can you tell us about that?
So during law school, I continued with just my passion for trying to understand, human nature, why we fight, why we don't compromise, what it is that drives us to these conflicts, and how it affects again, the civilian population, it just kept coming back. And so in my freshman or my first year of law school was when 9/11 happened. And all of a sudden you have this field that exists now, but this whole concept of what is Homeland Security? How does the law protect you? How does the law make you vulnerable? And so I started writing, papers about that intersection on, this was our home front and we'd been attacked on our home front, and this hadn't happened, since Pearl Harbor, and this kind of idea of we need to take a look at, what our laws are and what we can do or not do to prepare. And so then I pursued, I joined the JAG Corps, so I was sworn in as an officer for the Navy JAG to practice law for the Navy.
What was it like serving? Can you take me through maybe a typical day? What were your daily routines like? Where were you stationed? That kind of thing.
The best part, well, it was all great, but I remember my first experience was officer training. So you went to training in Rhode Island, and I was stationed in Rhode Island for officer training, and you're there with lawyers, medical doctors, clergy, dentists, people who have masters in public health. So we were there with all the nerds.
Yeah.
And so you put all the nerds together and make us do PT every day.
What is PT? Can you explain that?
Yeah, so all we did all day long was walk, run, drill, sit-ups, push-ups.
Did you climb the rope?
Climb the rope. Do 8-count bodybuilders, and it's this 8-step process that you repeat over and over and over again. And you'd run for miles, and you would march. So you would do just march and stay in step, and just learning to work as a team through physical fitness and training. And it was wonderful to have been sitting in a classroom and at night sitting and poring over books and studying for so many years, to know that part of your career now lets you and makes you get outside, run, move. So it was wonderful.
How was it being in that context as a young woman?
It was amazingly, I think, there's kind of this idea that there's a different standard, or you're treated differently, or maybe there's a little less respect. That was not my experience at all. I really felt that I was a part of a family, and everybody treated each other with respect. Nobody got more or less than somebody else, and there's a lot of picking on each other that you do as a group, but it was all in fun. It would be teasing each other about not knowing one of the rules that you're memorizing as you're memorizing things, or falling asleep during class and having to stand up in the back of the room. So everybody worked really well together, and it was really an empowering time, I found. And then after training, I was stationed in San Diego, and that's where I started doing the legal work. And just this feeling that you're given a voice so soon out of law school. People who would go into other more typical legal professions right after law school, they don't get the amount of responsibility you do in the military. You start right away and you're depended on, and it's a really good feeling.
So how long did you serve?
I served for about 2.5 years.
So what did you do after that?
Afterward, I began teaching English, and then that reminded me, oh, right.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to be when I grew up was a writer.
So when did you start thinking of yourself as a writer?
Oh, almost just recently.
Really?
Yeah, I feel for a long time. I've been writing and publishing for a long time, but it's only recently that I feel that I might have started doing some of the things that I think other people would say that counts, or that's that's right in the definition, or and
so what counts?
I don't know. I don't know that it's it's not quantity, it's not even quality. It's just, I think it's now every single day I write, every single day. I publish as often as I can, but more importantly, I feel like I'm studying and thinking and observing my world as a writer. That as I go through each day, the world is my office, and that feeling, I think, that has changed inside of me makes me feel a little bit more like that counts.
Yeah. And you write across genres. What do you learn as a writer from writing short stories, or writing a creative nonfiction piece, or writing a play?
I started, if you kind of follow through college and law school and the Navy, I was writing policy pieces, op-eds, and more of a, journalistic style opinion pieces. And then I naturally, I think from that, went into creative nonfiction because I'd had some really interesting life experiences, and all I knew to do were journalism style, get a quote, write a quote down, put the context in. And I started off with creative nonfiction essays and started studying it, and went to school to learn a little bit more official capacity, how to write better in a literary sense. And I think what I started learning as I was writing that way is how broad writing is. There are so many aspects to it, and you learn something every day, and it lets you be that person who does do everything, because when you write, you're covering so many different subjects at so many different times.
Yeah, in all of those different ways. So I wanted to talk a little bit about playwriting. How did you get into that?
So when I mentioned when I was younger, I wanted to be an actress, but I was also shy.
Yeah.
I was very shy, and the older I got, the more shy I became. So I thought theater is something I have to avoid. I'm too shy. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. And then I met another writer who was writing plays and had been acting in plays, and he said to me, "Hey, do you want to co-write a play with me?" And I said, I've never written a play. I don't know anything about that. And he said, well, and he had read some of the creative nonfiction I'd written. He said, I think you should give it a try. I think you'd be surprised. Let's just write a play together and see what happens. And so I said, okay. And I co-wrote this play, and then that play won an award, and I had no idea, what I was doing other than just trying to tell a story. And then I loved it, and I thought, oh, this is my favorite. This is my favorite form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is it your favorite form?
Because I think you get to be nuanced and subtle. And one of the biggest criticisms I, always got as I was learning to write creative nonfiction is that I was too subtle. And I never understood how to balance telling enough but keeping enough back to make a piece interesting. Playwriting lets you do that because then you can let an actor give a body language or do a gesture, or you don't have to be as blatant about what's going on in a play, and you can let the drama of it speak for those nuanced pieces that you want to keep a little untied up for everybody.
So do you direct your plays, or let's talk about that experience as a director, or maybe being directed with something that you've written, being an actor?
Yeah, so I've acted in 2 of my plays, and I want to direct. That's the next step. But for this last play, I think we were talking about Free to Go that just premiered in New York. For this one, I only had a month to get that ready to premiere, and that's why I ultimately ended up acting in it, because with a month to go, and it's a subject that was very important to me, that was done right, and with such a rush, and because I was very close to the subject, I was like, well, I'll cast myself, and I cast another friend as the male character, but I did ask a third friend to direct it because I was too close to it, and I wanted that outside perspective who didn't know the story, knew nothing about it, to come in and tell me how to act it.
Yeah. So what's Free to Go about?
Free to Go is, on one level, it's an interrogation. So there's a female detective who's asking a male teacher questions about a particular student. And so on that level, the teacher thinks he's really just there to help out and to clear up a misunderstanding. And it starts to turn where he starts to think, oh wait, am I an official suspect? And but from there, it goes into this idea that what is guilt, what is confession, what is coming to terms with, if you admit something, do you then have to face what you've done? And if you hold back, is that going to stay with you, and how long will that stay with you, and when will you be free to go, not just from your physical whatever you have done or not done, but from your mental agony or consciousness or guilt? When will you let that go?
So what was it like going from writing this play, it's words on the page, and you can read it in your mind and imagine, I guess, how it will look on the stage, but what is it like going from the page to there are people speaking these words and putting their own spin or take on things, or even for yourself as an actor, which I think that would be a really strange experience, or surreal almost, to go from this thing I'm writing as a character and now I'm that character.
It is surreal. It's dizzying. It's baffling too, and there's an out of bodiness to it, and you can start to feel really weird and sound really weird as you try to explain it. There's almost as if you disconnect in some ways from what you have written to then be able to act it. And in that process of learning lines as you're writing them versus lines when you have to deliver them, it's a completely different process. And something happens when you put on the hat of, I'm going to act this, that you kind of forget that you even wrote it. And so there's this moment in rehearsals where you don't even recognize this writer, this script, these words, and you're just trying to develop this character, and they're almost two different people until you come onto the stage, and at some point it all clicks and you're like, oh, I do know this person, I do know this character, and they come back together.
How about feeling in control or out of control? Because when we're writing an essay or a story or a poem or whatever it is, we're directing it on the page, and then whatever happens in the reader's mind happens in the reader's mind. But what's it like being there? People are doing what they're going to do. The actors are going to do what they're going to do with those lines. How does that work, since you're so embedded within that experience?
You have absolutely no control when it comes to a play.
Yeah.
With writing, you've at least got as much control as you can to calculate the words as best that you can, and just hope that the reader takes it the way that you want to. Maybe an editor tweaks a word or two, maybe an editor just takes it as you've given it. With a play, you hand that play over to stage and lighting crews, to directors, to actors, to the executive directors of theaters, to every part of that's going on, and then to the audience as well. And even when you try to manipulate that and say, well, I'm going to act in it, or I'm going to direct it, even still, I found myself, doing things that I know Holly the writer wouldn't have been happy with, that Holly the actor did to her words on stage. What, smacking my hand like, that's not right. That's not what the writer intended. And there I go doing the same thing too, because it's such when you're bringing something to life, you can't script that. And from night to night, you might do something completely different. Because it's a feeling and it's an emotion and it's alive, and so you can't contain it. And that's kind of scary, but you let go.
So what was opening night like with this?
Terrifying. I was nauseous all day. Like, oh, it's opening day, and I was born in the year of the horse, and always think about my sign and Sagittarius, and this feeling of like, just thinking of it like a horse race. It was actually Kentucky Derby weekend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so I felt this whole, like, on one hand, the gate's there and it's keeping me back, and I'm taking my hoof and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do this. But on the other hand, I was just like, can I just get one more day to think about this? And then right up until the play, you're standing in the dressing room, and there were other plays featured that night, so we're sharing the dressing room with these other actors. And I just remember this one woman, rubbing my stomach, and having me do these deep breathing exercises, and we were just standing and rocking and swaying to breathe and relax, and it worked, because then it was time to go, and I just let go and let all of the muscle memory take over.
So what do you think you've learned from writing plays that maybe has changed your writing in other forms in some way, or does it?
Oh, I think so. I think it's made me a better writer with short stories and with essays. It's made me a cleaner writer, more precise, and it's really made me, with a play, you have to be very, very clear on structure. How is this structured? And every single moment you have to think about dominoes, and that this domino, when this person says that, falls into the next and falls into the next. And so I've started applying that to my writing. And then a recent creative nonfiction piece I did was after I wrote this play, and I realized looking at that, I definitely had that same kind of let the domino hit the next one and the next one. So I think it's made it cleaner. I hope. I hope.
I'm going to change gears a little bit and talk about your nonfiction writing. And we're here in Pittsburgh for the Creative Nonfiction Writers Conference. So, and that's actually how we met in Cuba in 2017, February. And there you started this essay at a boxing ring or boxing practice. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I've always loved boxing. I think, speaking of theater, I mean, the ring, that is a stage and there is drama going on, and I think that's why I've loved boxing. So I was fascinated just sitting in the bleachers watching these men and one woman, warm up. And what was fascinating to me is there was this younger guy, and a little bit less muscle tone than the rest, and he had this rooster comb mop of hair bouncing around, and he had this huge tattoo up his arm, and not that, and tattoos stick out, but when I got a chance to speak to him, and I just asked, the name was Melania, and it's a woman's name, but I've learned not to assume anything, like, oh, this is a girlfriend, this is a wife. So I asked, and he said it was his sister. And I thought, that is so odd to me, that a brother would have his sister's name, and it's not little, it's all the way up his arm. And I thought, so I just started asking him questions, and I was fascinated with what makes you and your sister be so close. What is the tie there? What's the bond there that you have her name across your forearm?
And what did you find out about that? Did he tell you?
He did. They're very poor and struggling for money, and he's basically the father of their household, and he feels very responsible for her, and their parents aren't really around, and so he feels that he has to provide for her, be a father to her, and that's why he's boxing. He wants to win championships to make a living and to provide for his sister. And he said, I can look at that while I'm punching and remember that I'm fighting for my sister and my family to make a living in Cuba. So that was fascinating.
Yeah. And the unusual part of this, in this particular piece, is I was there when you wrote the first part of this piece, and as writers, we never know where something's going to lead when we get that first impulse to write something down. We know there's a story for something, but we don't know where that sunny day in that boxing ring was going to lead you. So I'd like you to read the published version of this essay, just a short piece of it for us. Just tell us where it was published, the title of it, and we'll read it and talk about that.
Yeah, so this is Counting Time in a Welterweight Waltz, and it was published in the Loch Raven Review. And I did not go back to this piece until almost a year after our trip from Cuba. And it was writing the play that made me want to come back to this subject of a brother and a sister. So this is Counting Time in a Welterweight Waltz. The sun is not quick on its feet. It holds position over the boxing ring. Corrugated sheets of metal, the only roof-like structure of the open-air gym, tint the arena of the ring in a square of shade. I sit on a wooden bleacher in the open air of the Gimnasio Boxeo Rafael Trejo in the cobblestoned district of Old Havana, a tourist snapping photos, tapping index finger to camera in spurts that mirror the boxer's shuffle. Eduardo pivots his torso and jabs the air. Sweat rolls down his bare chest and dots the graveled concrete around his feet. Hey, 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 he shouts, punctuating each 1-2-3 thrust combination. His trainer looks up and down from his stopwatch, blasting his whistle, and commands, Hero, 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 he yells, instructing Eduardo to turn, turn, turn. Eduardo pivots left, right, left. He strikes the air again and again, faster and harder. I study the intensity in his eyes, in his jaw, in his veins. He's punching at air with conviction. He strikes at what can't be touched or seen, as if he's making contact with it. Hey, 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 he shouts. They're warming up with his body, coming less from the throat, more from the gut. He's trying to drop 5 pounds from his already lean frame. 5 less pounds will give him an advantage in a lower welterweight division where he'll have height on his competition. He is 6 feet tall, not counting the mohawk mop of black hair that bounces like a rooster comb with each jab. Hey, 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 he shouts, all gut. He shifts his stance and leads 1-2-3 jabs with his left instead of his right. Sweat shimmers against his skin like the sheen of his blue trunks. The tattoo emblazoned in cursive script across his forearm pulses over top flexing muscle. It reads Melania, the name of his 12-year-old sister. Eduardo squirts water in his mouth and over his head. I move from the bleacher to come ringside, curious. She's like a daughter to me, he says in Spanish as he laces up his gloves. I want to provide for her. He looks down at Melania's name before climbing in the ring to spar with Cuba's Olympic champion. This is the contact he makes punching at air. He's striking out for a title, money, a better life. He fights for her. I stand outside the ring. I watch their 1-2-3 welterweight waltz. My brother's middle name is Edward. He is 6 feet tall. He has a thick mop of dark hair. The similarities end there. My brother has no tattoos. My brother and I stopped fighting for each other. We haven't spoken in 5 or 6 years. I lose count. 1-2-3 jabs.
And that was just the beginning of that. And as you go through the piece, you explain why your relationship was like that, which I don't necessarily want to focus on that, but I'm interested in your process for bringing yourself to a point to finish this.
I think, when you have, in talking about relationships with my family in general, I think, when you have a dynamic and it's a family one and it's not what you expected. It's not brother and sister hanging out, talking, going out and doing things. And we never had that relationship. We would be friends and do family things together, but we were never close. And then, he was arrested and I was trying to help him, and his arrest and all that went around with that really kind of brought to a head this concept that we didn't know each other. We didn't trust each other. He didn't trust me to help him, and I didn't trust him to want my help. And I think that these unsettled questions and relationship tensions just came to a head, and it's, one of those times where you think, I have to step away from that, family or not. You can't, sometimes you can't punch a wall, that metaphorical wall. And I think it's interesting because now there's a different change in dynamic in my family where, I don't have that right now, and that's sad. But on the other hand, the one thing I didn't have, which is my dad's family, learning about them now being receptive to, journeying out to Oklahoma, to meeting our family out there, that's now open. So sometimes you have to do that dance and just go where your feet will have space. And so family's very interesting. It's my theme.
Always
right,
plenty
always
of,
plenty.
of material. So after you published it, did anyone from your family read it, or
no?
How did you feel? Did you feel like you could be at peace with what happened in some way?
Yeah, I think I had tried to write about this in a different version, in a different way, a couple years ago while it was happening. And I think that that's what's great about plays and essays is it's not a newspaper piece that has to come out right away without this step back and this reflection and this distance. I think you need space and time distance and emotional distance. And I think sitting in Cuba, I knew that there was something I wanted to do. And then I didn't look at it, didn't touch it until about a year later when I don't know what that was, but it said, it's time to do this, and it's time to do it literally from the gut. Don't think about it. Don't try to be a writer about it. This is an important emotional story, I think, for a lot of people who have family problems, and I would think that many people have some sort of family conflict, and to just be at peace with it. And I think I finally, that's why I'm saying maybe now I'm a writer, because maybe I trust myself a little bit more to know where to take a piece and how to do it a little bit better, a little bit more right.
Yeah. And this is sort of a different topic, but you did start this piece on a trip you've taken, and you've written several pieces of travel writing. For example, your bike trip through Vietnam. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, going to Vietnam was one of my dreams come true. I had written about Vietnam. I had published pieces about Vietnam. I tried to create my own major in Vietnam War history. So getting to go and to bike, and that is the way I prefer to travel wherever I go is by bike. You get to, you're among the city or the towns or the village, and you're not a tourist. You get to be with people and meet people, and then that was an awakening once I got there. I dreamed about it, I'd imagined it, and then I get there, and I think textbooks and studying did not meet reality, and reality was even more heartbreaking than reading all of these firsthand accounts and primary sources and interviews. Being there and seeing that it's a very chaotic, so many motorcycles you're competing with on the road, so much going on. It was eye-opening, and I don't know, unfortunately, that much has changed. And I think that they're really, trying hard to come back from everything that happened.
Maybe we've already talked about this a little bit, but how do you think travel and writing about your travels changes you, or how does it influence you in other ways?
I think that's what I love about traveling is visiting and meeting people in so many different parts of the world and different cultures. You think that you're there to to learn about other people and their cultures, and you definitely are, but I find that everybody I meet, you know, people I sit with on the side of a street in Vietnam and talk to and have tea with, or, you know, people in Nepal I'm up on a mountaintop with and we're just talking about the fog rolling in. They teach me so much more about myself. And that might sound a little selfish, but I think to be a writer, you have to really know who you are to be able to write. And I think I'm just now starting to fully understand who I am. And a lot of that has been through the people that I meet and just being open to their thoughts and reflections, and then seeing myself the way that they might see me. And so I think that that's been a really wonderful experience.
Yeah. You're also a musician. I'm just gonna totally change subjects altogether here, but we'll find that it is related to writing a little bit. So you play the ukulele.
Yes.
How did you get into that?
To stop being so critical of myself. You know, writing is a very there's a lot of self critique and criticism that goes into that. Not to mention the outside critique and criticism. But I needed an outlet. I wanted an artistic outlet that I didn't have any aspirations to do anything with, and nobody would ever have to know that I did it. And so I started taking lessons from a friend of mine. I said, look, the only goal here is that when I'm having a really hard writing day and I'm stumped, that I can just sit here and strum this and hum a song. And that was my goal. So that's how I started playing the ukulele.
Yeah, and it helps.
And it helps. And the reason I chose the ukulele is because it only has, you know, 4 strings. So it was, this is going to be easier to learn. There are fewer strings than a guitar. So let's do this.
And you perform with it too and singing, right?
Yeah, and that was not the goal. So yes, I do, and that started with the first play that I wrote. There, with my collaborator, there was this idea that play is about a road trip. And we thought, well, we can't have a road trip without music. So we started writing lyrics, and then I started fooling around with melody on the ukulele. The next thing you know, we've written a soundtrack for this play. And then we thought, well, we should just perform this because we've worked so hard on it. And so the first time I ever got up on stage to perform singing and playing the ukulele was very similar to opening night for Free to Go, when I thought, you know, I'm going to be sick.
Yeah.
You're standing there, everyone's looking at you, they're waiting for what you're going to do, and I'm thinking, oh, somebody should really tell them I have no idea what I'm about to do.
But you did it.
I did, and there was one song where I did stop because the lyrics just blinked, and I had that moment, and fortunately, I don't take myself too seriously, so I was like, hey, y'all, I'm going to be honest, just forgot the lyrics for a moment. Give me a second, we'll start this one right back over. So I did.
So how do you think your work has changed over time, or what do you think your body of work so far represents?
I hope it's changing in a better way. I'm less concerned about, you know, that checklist, what I have to do, how something has to be written, and just listening to myself and listening to my own inner voice and thoughts and goals and letting go. I think just not wrangling something so much. But I think that is a process. I think that you have to start from this very insecure, vulnerable place, open to learning anything and trying anything that anybody tells you, and until you start thinking, oh, I don't have to do it that way. And so I think I've definitely changed a lot as a writer, and I'm more in my own skin, and I think the words and the stories show that that I'm okay to let it be.
Yeah. So what's a good writing day look like to you?
Oh, when there are no emails, there are no phone calls, there's no lawnmowers. I wish everybody could pick one day in the neighborhood. This is the day that everybody can work in the lawns, turn things on, power saws. I really like silence. So a perfect writing day is silence. Or if there's a thunderstorm, that means people are quiet and the world is quiet except for nature. And I love that. So yeah, me sitting there with everything else crossed off and just handwriting and listening to a thunderstorm. Yeah, that would silence everything else out.
Yeah. What's the best writing advice anyone has given to you?
Oh, and I'm gonna feel really bad. We've been at a conference, so I have a lot of names in my head.
Oh, you don't have to name.
I'm not gonna attribute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in
There's
general.
this travel writer, and she's very well known, and she's a brilliant travel writer. And when I was first starting out, I had a one-on-one, like 15-minute workshop with her when I was just beginning. And I remember her saying to me, whatever happens, whatever anybody says to you, don't quit. And that every day sticks with me, every day. And I will never forget her for saying that. And that, yeah, best advice.
What about the best advice that you could give to other people, other writers?
I would say to pay it forward to each other. I think that sometimes we don't realize how we can help each other, and even if it's just with kind words, to pay it forward and to, if someone's helped you out, then help somebody else out. And even if it's just with kindness, because it's, definitely essential.
Yeah, we're a community,
right.
Writers.
Yeah.
So it's good to be good to each other. What are you working on now?
Oh my goodness. So this goes together. Just finished recording the official album for the play that has the soundtrack. So now it's a high quality production with the right sound. And now that I have that, I want to continue writing more music, even if it's just instrumental pieces to accompany plays and even stories. And I want to start creating more of a packet of work that's not just on the page, but includes either an audio component or a performance component, where if you think about visual art, have these installation pieces. So I would like to create some sort of installation, literary component where it's more, an all sensory experience that highlights language and literature, because I think that writers sometimes, we're at the bottom of the rung of who gets attention. Musicians get attention, painters get attention, sculptors, and I think writing, we have to explore ways that we can get a little attention too. So trying to pull some project like that together to put all these pieces of everything that I've fallen into doing, make it make sense.
Yeah, when you bike on down to Oklahoma,
right?
We'll catch up.
As I'm biking, I'll be writing songs in my head.
Yeah, multitasking. So how it goes. Is there anything else you want to talk about that maybe we didn't mention or cover?
No, I don't think so. Just very thankful to get a chance to be a part about learning more about following these root stories and following my family stories, and getting out there and reconnecting and meeting people for the first time.
Bring you home.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.